Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
We deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us on.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, David. My professional background is a little bit different than other libertarians and other candidates for president from the other parties too, in the sense that my background is in public service and public policy, and I believe the American public is ready to accept the credibility that comes from a campaign with a candidate like me and a campaign like the one that we're building. My first career was in financial services and economics. I worked for a couple of banks. I worked for the White House Office of Management and Budget for a couple of years. I taught economics for 3 different universities. I ran my own business for many years in the business of educating financial services professionals and providing consulting services to financial services organizations. And I was a free market advocate in the financial services industry in Washington, D.C. for many years. And after that, as a second career, that was probably almost 3 decades. As a second career, extending my life in public service, I went to work as a police officer. I worked as an officer on the road in Broward County, Florida for 11 and a half years, from age 49 to 60 until about 18 months ago when I left, having been a training officer. Very pro-reform, spread a lot of message about the need for aligning our police departments and our other law enforcement agencies better with our society's values, which is why I spend a lot of time now talking about criminal justice reform and reforming the way that we manage police officers and law enforcement agencies. I think the American public is ready for a message of institutional level change. I think that that takes not only a platform of very transformational ideas like mine, but a tremendous amount of credibility is required to back that up. Because I'm the guy out there not just saying inflation is naughty, but we need to end the Fed. And having a plan to do that, having experience in the field, for example, really matters when it comes to credibility. And the same thing with criminal justice reform. When I talk about it, it's from a position of having worked in the field and knowing firsthand how messed up our business of law enforcement is and how messed up the war on drugs is, just as a couple of examples. I think that's going to matter a lot on the other side of the nomination process. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I grew up really poor. And in fact, I grew up with a outhouse and no electricity. And I didn't have a TV until I was 12 years old. So it was kind of odd when I discovered computers and the internet, and that became my profession, having not touched electricity till I was 12 years old, essentially. But I discovered the internet and I became a serial entrepreneur. I started probably 15 or 20 different businesses. Early on, I looked at AOL and I knew that they had these chat rooms and they had all these eyeballs going to the chat rooms. And I coined the term hits equals money. And so I decided that as many people as I could get to my website would give me great financial benefit. And so I proceeded to build a bunch of companies around getting eyeballs onto my platforms. And that culminated in a company called Friend Finder Networks, which we grew to 600 employees doing $350 million in annual revenue. We had 40 million paid subscribers with 100 million plus regular subscribers in all different aspects of the dating world. And after I sold that business in 2007, I decided I was going to start a hobby website around cars because I love cars. And so I started that, and that actually turned into a 10-year business that also produced a lot of money and over 25 million fans on Facebook. And so my hobby turned into quite a business. So my whole background is around network marketing, social marketing, and reaching the largest audience possible. And so since I've launched my presidential campaign, my Facebook page has hit almost 17 million people has viewed the different messages that I'm putting out. And now I'm pushing hard on Twitter and getting the social marketing aspect out of the way. And I'm pushing a message of fair tax, of term limits, of ranked choice voting. I'm trying to systemically change the system because right now libertarians have a hard time just even getting on the ballot. So we need to educate the populace that that is unfair and that the system is rigged and the elections are rigged. And if we can do that, that will level the playing field for future candidates and allow us to set America free, which is what my ultimate goal is.
Yeah, so my resume is not quite as long, haven't been in the workforce quite as long, but most of my experience starting right out of school was I got about 15 years of experience working in and out of the restaurant industry, doing everything from being the guy who washes your dishes to the guy who opens new restaurants and trains new workers in protocol and everything like that, being a front of house general manager. That was where I had a lot of my experience. And then I moved on into the corporate world and working in the world of worldwide logistics, moving things from point A to point B, having to deal with international customers, and most frustratingly, having to deal with the U.S. Customs Department on a regular basis, but understanding how trade works and how we are a worldwide connected marketplace gave me a huge education there. And then most recently, I've been involved in corporate HR, involving in the hiring and unfortunately firing of people, but having to do that job where I'm scouting candidates, interviewing candidates, that kind of stuff for a securities firm who handles private security, both for like residential as well as commercial stuff. So that's my most recent gig. But I can say that my work experience has taught me the value of what the customer wants, delivering on that service. But even in the way I live my life, it formed my political philosophy. You know, the reason why I'm so pro Second Amendment is to walk out of a bar at 3 a.m. with with pockets full of cash tips, and I'm going to walk 6 blocks back to my car, and understanding the danger that exists when you have that as your life and need to protect yourself. I've always been somebody who is very interested in the marketplace, and that's why I jumped into corporate logistics and moving things from A to B. It really gives you the understanding that the world is actually much smaller than we think it is, and that even things that happen all the way across the globe can affect your business here in the United States. And that's why it's important for us to be supporting free markets, free minds, free people. And then outside of my formal employment, I've always been an activist. Most recently been and jumped into the criminal justice fight here in Atlanta to oppose Cop City. I believe in being a visible libertarian, being out there and not just being online, but getting out in front of people and showing the libertarian position in a way that resonates outside of just our echo chamber. And the best way to do that is to form those single issue coalitions, be the libertarian in the room, and be willing to speak truth to power, much like I did when I ran for Senate last year. So that's kind of been my professional life, as well as my my non-professional activist side gig the last couple of decades.
Sure. My background is as a serial entrepreneur and political activist. I started my first company in 1995. I dropped out of Duke and started an e-commerce company, which I sold in 2001, and then became a venture capitalist for a very short period of time. Started my second company, which was in the healthcare sector, focusing on a very simple business model, which was addressing the obesity problem by using financial incentives to reward people for improving their health, for actual measured outcomes. It was a very successful business, clients in 43 states. We were starting to work with Fortune 500 companies, and it was destroyed by Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and a very overzealous attorney general. So, as I like to say, hell hath no fury, like an entrepreneur scorned. That is what got me big time into political activism. So I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, became for a period of time the chair of the Free State Project during the time where we reached 20,000 signers and triggered the move. I was the chair of a number of political organizations. I started a super PAC called Stark 360, which was one of the first super PACs to raise money using Bitcoin. I ran for the United States Senate as an independent in 2016 because Kelly Ayotte had interfered with our state speaker's race and basically interfered in a negative way, pushing Obamacare Medicaid expansion for her own political future. So I recruited a slate to run as independents and received 17,000 votes, which is the largest vote total a libertarian. I ran as an independent, but it's more votes than the libertarian got. It was a four-way race, and cost her that race because she only lost by 1,700 votes. Then ran as governor for. I actually run as a libertarian as well. Ended up running as a sheriff in 2018, and then got out of politics entirely. Basically, gave up on the process. For a whole variety of reasons. And I think the tyranny we saw in 2020 really captivates all of that. I mean, we had Republican majorities and the least amount of freedom I've had in my entire life. And there is no second closest is under a Republican president with a Republican governor and complete Republican majorities in New Hampshire. But I had gotten out of politics and I had gotten completely out of fiat currency. I've been living off of crypto since 2019. And I basically saw between COVID tyranny and the regulations that were coming to decentralized crypto, plus the emergence of central bank digital currency, kind of brought me back into this political realm. And what I'm actually running on isn't that as president, I can fix anything. I don't think anybody as president can fix any of our problems. I mean, the truth of the matter is we have gridlock now that gridlock makes sense if you have a constitutionally limited form of government, but our bureaucracy has grown to the point where we're the Titanic, and now that gridlock actually prevents you from stopping the ship from running into the iceberg. So I'm not running necessarily on that. I'm running on the fact that we're facing an existential threat in terms of central bank digital currency that could be used as a gateway to tyranny. We're on the verge of World War III, and we have a Federal Reserve and a Ponzi monetary system where fiat currency has never worked in human history. So my primary campaign platform is promoting a bank run to basically pull all of the money out of the bank, move into self-custody crypto, gold, and silver. And by doing all of those things, you end the Fed, stop World War III, and halt CBDC tyranny.
I do like that. I have to mention that I've seen, especially since booking you for this, I've been following you and watching your social media, and seeing the calling for a bank run stuff has made me very happy, because it's a lot more of a tangible, like, but what can we do? That you actually answer that question, and I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Behrman, what is your personal background, and how does it translate to getting people to do what you want and to follow you?
Sure. So as you know, I am Dan Taxation and Theft Behrman. I hate taxes so much I changed my middle name to Taxation and Theft. I'm really good at breaking stuff. I started off at my younger years breaking radios and electronics and trying to figure out how they work. As I got older, I learned how to break cops. I learned how to break traffic courts. I learned how to break pretty much every bureaucratic government system that there is. I've broken the IRS. I've broken Department of Homeland Security, and I've broken the FEC. And when I say that, I of course I don't mean I didn't hack in and steal all their information or do anything illegal. What I did is actually just follow the rules that they're obligated to follow, and what I'm prohibited or not prohibited to do. And these systems just crumble with just a small amount of stress or pressure on them. Because the way these things are designed is they're designed to circumvent the limitations put in place by the Constitution. So everyone thinks like we have this, oh my God, it's this tyrannical system that has come over and the Constitution's been thrown out the window. But the reality is they've just found a really sneaky way to tiptoe all around it. And if you understand how it works, you can break it. The whole thing just falls apart. And what's amazing about this, and as I've been sharing this information with other people, is they realize the IRS isn't this big, bad, scary machine that they think it is. All these systems in place, the CBDCs, they're not as scary as they sound. Is it something that I want to use? No, absolutely not. But the fact that people think they're going to come in and like force us to use this stuff is absolute nonsense. And in fact, the only way they're going to be able to force us to comply with this sort of thing is by convincing it to do it to ourselves. Think about all the COVID lockdowns and all these other shenanigans. If none of us would have played along with it, that never would have happened. They weren't going to start sending the military door to door to stick 300 million Americans and make sure they don't leave their houses, right? None of this, which by the way, that was another thing. As soon as they started saying, oh, you can't leave your house unless you have a special permit, I started printing out permits and giving them to everybody I knew, saying, hey, you worked for me. I was running for president at the time. That's a free speech media organization, and you now have a free pass. You're considered an essential employee working for me now. The system was broken. It's as easy as that. The reality is I hear a lot of great stuff from these guys, and I know some of them. I've had the pleasure of knowing them for quite a while. They're really great guys. But unfortunately, and this is something I've seen throughout the Libertarian Party and independent parties and smaller parties, is a lot of people just don't understand what the system is or what it's going to take to break it. And the reality is it's not about running around and shaking hands and knocking on doors and reaching as many people with a message of some utopia. The reality is we need a culture shift. If you look at the people, if you look at what's going on in America, it's not like everybody is like cheering on this destruction that we're heading towards. It's that everybody's pulling it apart into a bunch of small little factions. And the reality is when you want to fix these small little factions, you need to address each one of them, and you need to go to them and address them specifically, and not just tell them they're wrong, but tell them they're absolutely right. Because most of these people that are pushing for free healthcare and wage increases and all these, they're absolutely right. Are the solutions that they want right? No, absolutely not. But those are the only solutions that they have to a problem that they are right about. The cost of living is too high. Everybody's getting screwed. And inflation and like all this other stuff. I mean, I hear people say like, like Aaron was saying about, do a bank run and take all your money out. Yeah, sure, that's great. But they have, and there was somebody from the Fed.
All right, well, we'll save the comments on other people's comments a little bit. And you're good. I want to do a couple of like rapid fire questions. So these shouldn't be like long answers at all. These should be questions that the answer is like right there in your head. So we can do kind of like popcorn style. Whoever can give me these answers first. First, I want to hear about your campaign. Who's your campaign manager, your treasurer, and your events coordinator?
I'm happy to go first. Right now, I'm being managed. Currently, Tyler Harris, he managed my exploratory committee. My treasurer, you said, was that the second part? That's Tim Hagan, former LNC treasurer. So I know I'm never going to be in trouble with the FEC because he never had a problem with them over many years of doing that for the National Party. And then I have coordinating my events right now is Steve Dosbach. He's kind of handling up my volunteer and coordinator efforts. And he is a former National Party chair and a former, he was the chair of the Jorgensen campaign in 2020. So I got really experienced hands. In addition to the volunteers, I got over 40 states, but that's the three people I have kind of heading up those departments.
Nice. Termont, I saw your hand go up.
My hand did go up, and it's on behalf of a great team about whom I'm always excited to brag a little bit. Dennis Consorte is running our campaign. He's the past campaign manager for Larry Sharp's campaigns and other events. You all probably know him. Gabby Cordova is on our team, formerly of the LNC. We're very excited to have her on board doing a lot of events coordination. And David, she's probably the one that your team coordinated with, of course. Yeah, I think you asked about treasurer. That's me. Because if you're an economist and you can't do that on your own and add a little bit of value, there's no way I could have asked someone else to do that, especially considering the liability that the FEC attaches to this. By the way, I've got an ongoing battle with, I got to pick a bone with something that was said earlier. I got an ongoing battle with the FEC because I refuse to disclose personal financial reports lately. That's not on behalf of the campaign that we're filing dutifully, of course, because that's on behalf of a whole team of professionals. But my personal financial reports, yeah, I wish Dan had broken the FEC, but I can report that they are alive, well, and threatening to report me to the Justice Department, and I hope to God they do.
Nice.
I'll go next.
All right.
So Larry Sharp's been advising me on my campaign, and I've recently taken on TJ Ferreira as the campaign manager. And additionally, Chris Miniletti is my treasurer. He's been my treasurer. I filed over 2 years ago. So both TJ and Chris have been working with my campaign for that entire time. And Larry's been on for quite a while now too. And the team's growing quite a bit. We're really ramping up now we have a big policy team and we're doing policy meetings every week, really getting into the nitty gritty of policy on all the issues so that we have written policy, not just talk, not just little one-liners, but actual written policy of the solutions that we have for the problems facing everyday Americans. And our policies are all around common sense and fairness, because in my life, I had a lot of unfair things that the IRS came after me and attacked me pretty heavily. And, just growing up poor, and, I had some disadvantages. So I want to see all Americans have a fair shot at, being successful and having happy families and a happy life.
Nice. Aaron, what does your campaign team look like?
Well, the person serving in the roles that you mentioned is actually my wife, Eileen Day, who has quite a background actually in politics. She was the chair of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance from 2010 to 2014, which if you followed all that in New Hampshire actually lowered its budget by 11% in the 2010-2011 session. And when she was chair of the NHLA, she helped recruit 299 people to win in the state house and attain super majorities to make all of that possible. She also worked with me on my super PAC in 2014 and was my campaign manager for my gubernatorial campaign in 2018. So we worked on dozens of events together and campaigns for ourselves and others over the years. And then there are other people working with us and that have also worked with us throughout the years on various projects, including some people that I brought from various startups that I've worked on as well.
Nice. Dan, what does your team look like?
So I've got my marketing company. We do all kinds of we've got some great businesses we're promoting, and I use the same marketing company to promote everything. As far as like having an official manager and treasurer and all this stuff, I don't have one because I'm these are FEC rules, and we're playing by FEC rules. And something that really got me in the 2020 election was when the Libertarian Party told me that I wasn't allowed to participate in debates unless I was officially filed with the FEC and playing by their rules. But Mike, let me give you this piece of advice. Go back and read the Constitution and look at the rules of what it takes to become president. You have to be 35, you have to be a resident, and you have to get a majority of votes from the electors. There is nothing in there about filing a committee. There's no obligation for you to do so. And any campaigning you do is protected First Amendment free speech. So you can give the FEC the middle finger. You can break them too if you want to.
I love that. And I'm going to send him a picture of your middle finger too, because you're a good American. You're exactly right. I told him it was a First Amendment violation. And you're exactly right. The FEC, of course, has no authority over ballot access. So, no one should be worried about that shit. Like I say, I hope to God they referred me to the Justice Department, because then we can shove it up 2 butts instead of 1.
I love it. All right. Have any of you ever filed for bankruptcy, had like a nasty public divorce, been convicted of a serious crime, or anything that a journalist is going to tear you apart for later on down the road?
No, but it's only 9:30. Why would you ask so early?
Yeah, I'm boring with that kind of stuff, man. Like in terms of like controversial past, really. Other than I used to work at some seedy gay dive bars, back in the day. I guess that's about the worst you got on me. I've seen some things, but nothing too illegal.
Yeah, I don't have any. I've never been arrested. I don't have any record. I haven't filed bankruptcy.
Never been arrested? Are you even a real libertarian? Come on.
No, I've been arrested. Cannabis use back in the day, but that actually makes me more libertarian to say that. So that's not really a skeleton in the closet so much as a trophy on the wall.
Now, David, for the benefit of those who haven't answered yet, I'd like to point out, and this came up in my conversation, my first interview to become a police officer, which is actually a lot more embarrassing than being a convicted felon in this country, I might add, by the way. But the first conversation was, understand, Mr. Termott, we're not asking, have you ever been prosecuted and convicted of a felony? We're asking if you've ever committed one and not been caught. And that's a very different question. And let me just say, I had a different answer.
Yeah, well, I commit my 3 felonies a day, for sure. There was when I was campaigning for Texas House, I was sticking my flyer. There was this stretch of houses, and they were all like 100 feet apart. And I was like, I'm not in like 100 feet of driveway. I'm not walking up. So I stuck them in the mailboxes. That's a felony. Did you know that? That's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also known as being a life-saving drug smuggler. I smuggle insulin from Mexico to the U.S. at cost because, to bring attention to the cartel that's running the insulin market up here. Yeah, most of the charges, usually when I get to court, I win. So nothing really to I think the news is going to find it any.
I want to go on the record as having predicted hours ago that Dan would be the one guy that said yes, besides me. I'm proud of you, buddy.
I mean, I was sued for $10,000 over a credit card that I refused to pay because I was going through a really tough time. And when they filed it with the court, I wrote back in my response and said, okay, well, show me the contract. And they basically dismissed the case. So, I mean.
Yeah, I should have caveated. Is there any crimes you're not like proud of? Because that would have checked a bunch off of your list.
I'll add, as a result of the 2016 election that I was involved in the slate of independent candidates, I ended up a co-defendant in $280 million worth of defamation lawsuit, which was a fascinating ordeal that took 5 years to resolve. But I wouldn't consider it to be a negative, especially since when you go and kind of delve into it, it's nothing that's a liability for me. If anything, it just shows if you get involved in the two-party system and you're effective, people will come after you every way they can and try to leverage you in every way they can.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I voted for Obama once.
Yeah, I should also add that, in business, I've been sued an awful lot of times, but it's always been civil. It's never been criminal. And it's always been, sometimes it's been 5 years or more of different lawsuits where they were coming after me for everything I owned. I got sued by the Recording Industry of America. I got sued by, the IRS. I got, and I got sued by patent trolls up the wazoo for all kinds of business practices that they were trying to claim that they owed us. So I have no love for patent trolls, and the court system is all in cahoots with those guys. So yeah, that's
true.
So been sued a lot.
That is true. Lars is absolutely correct about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry he got swept up in that stuff. One of the guys on our campaign team is an intellectual property attorney, and he would love to offer you advice for free, but it sounds like you're already well along that curve.
Well, I think one of the things we can all agree on is that society is over-criminalized. There are way too many things that break laws because there's way too many laws out there. And unfortunately, that's what leads to so many people being in jail. And, we can say, I've been arrested for this, arrested for that. But the truth is there are millions of people in this country that are in prison right now, and many of them shouldn't really be there for any reason other than the fact that it's the state applying its boot upon the neck of the populace. And so, I hope we can all agree that as controversial as any of our pasts are, it's probably due to an over-criminalized society anyways, and we've never really sought to harm people. So I don't think if you're harming people, stealing from people, causing fraud or coercion, there should be nothing controversial about any of our pasts, regardless of what the law says. So that's kind of where I kind of see this whole conversation just kind of flowing into, is just the fact that we've all done stuff in the past that may or may not have broken a law, but if we're not really applying force or hurting other people, have we really broken any natural rights or liberties of any other people? And that's the most important thing.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that you are all better than the one other LP candidate who is not on this debate. All right, this one is a little bit longer form, but if someone went onto your website right now to sign up as a volunteer, how easy is it for them to find the sign-up form? Do you who processes the sign-ups, and do you have set tasks that you could give them fairly quickly if they were to sign up?
I should probably go first because I just got off of a meeting with my team an hour ago, finalizing something that had been hanging up in the air. So I'm glad that we finally nailed that down. We have had a good sign-up form up for months, and we're very grateful for the people who have used it, not only because they proved that the damn thing works, but because we were able to slot them into useful positions. Right now, we're in a heavy outreach program, of course, but we have slotted people into website development and social media. If anyone wants to participate in any of those three, we're welcoming people on. Most importantly, from the standpoint of our campaign, is that we have recently onboarded a half a dozen people to come on in what I would call lightly paid positions. The professional staff that you try to starve nonetheless, right? But we're grateful that we're able to afford to pay people a little bit. And what really matters about that is that the structure is ready to go, very professional, to take advantage and utilize volunteers. So now is really an exciting time for people to reach out and become a part of that.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, we have a sign-up form. It's easy to get to. We have had a lot of volunteers on our sign-up form. In fact, we just got a new policy team person out of the sign-up form, which was really awesome. And to be honest, I dropped the ball a little bit. I have a lot of volunteers, and I didn't quite get back to them in the timely fashion that I would have liked to. So to remedy that, I hired a person that is going to be taking care of all those volunteers and making sure that they get slotted into the positions that they need to be slotted into. Because let's face it, if people are putting into your form that they want to help you out, you should be taking advantage of that. And so for all those people that I didn't get back to yet, I apologize, and we will be getting back to you shortly.
Return my call, Lars.
Yeah, I'm putting you right on the team, Mike.
So, so my campaign, I'm very proud of what we got going on in my campaign. First off, my website looks extremely professional. When I got started doing this, both when I ran for U.S. Senate and for this presidential campaign, I wanted to make sure that my website and my presence online did not look second best or half-assed at all compared to the duopoly. So I'm very proud of my team that put it together. It's very easy to access to become a volunteer or a donor or just somebody who wants to stay just tuned to the mailing list. We have all those options very easily available, as well as a store. If you want to wear Chase gear, you can get it from the store right now. You can go to votechaseoliver.com. But in terms of how are we processing those things, right now we have over 100 dedicated volunteers in 40 states who are helping as I travel across the country. They're preparing basically as soon as I'm on the ground, we have the plan of where I'm going, what I'm doing, everything's set up and looking professional. And that's the most important thing, is that we want to make sure candidates, when you hit the ground, you want to be able to use every minute you can to be doing effective campaigning. And to do that, you have to have a really, really good team of people. And I got to say, I've been to like 19 states so far in this process. I'm looking to hit all 50. And as I do it, each time I hit the ground, I have a really good team of people. And so we're activating those volunteers. We're keeping them busy. And of course, the most important thing is once the nomination occurs, we're really going to be activating them to become our precinct leaders and the people who are going to be in charge of organizing below them. Because once the nomination happens, this goes from 0 to 100 extremely quickly. And we want to be able to make sure that we're able to hit that acceleration and really able to move forward. And that's the biggest goal that I've been doing in this process. So yeah, I'm so proud of my volunteers. They just got off a call right now. Should be in. Fortunately, I couldn't go on it like I do every week normally. But I've told them all on the campaign Slack to be watching this tonight. So I hope we have an audience full of folks here who are really proud of the work they're doing as well.
Awesome. Love to hear it. I also like that you specifically mentioned kind of turning up the pace once the nomination happens, because that's something that not a lot of campaigns are exactly prepared for.
Oh yeah, I'm prepared day one. No arguing over logos for me for months. We're good to go.
Oh man, I love how we can all take jabs at the same campaign together. Aaron, what's the sign up like for volunteering for your campaign?
Sure. We've had our website up since February the 7th, which is when I launched, and the sign up for volunteers is on every page, including the front page, and we have a whole CRM system built up for that. However, my campaign is a little bit different in the sense that I'm really focusing on these activism campaigns, starting with the bank run. So I have just finished one of what will be 2 books called The Final Countdown, Crypto, Gold, Silver, and the People's Last Stand Against Tyranny by Central Bank Digital Currencies. And I'm going to be going around the country, starting with PorkFest as kind of the first launch presentation for this book. But I'm going to be going around the country presenting a 2-hour talk that goes into detail about this particular issue with specific action steps that people can take. This is the first of 2 books. The second book, Exit the Matrix, is going to cover everything from public school indoctrination to mainstream media brainwashing to big tech censorship. So those are going to be the big themes. And then we're going to structure a separate super PAC model to handle all of the normal kind of GOTV and all of that other kind of blocking and tackling stuff. There's a parallel structure for that. And I can't run the super PAC, but I've done super PACs in the past, and there are certain advantages to, this is what DeSantis is doing. There are a lot of advantages from a fundraising perspective to having a separate super PAC. Even though I can't coordinate with it, it's something that can raise more money and, kind of scale up more quickly. So I'm dedicating my own campaign and my own volunteers to pushing this content, pushing these activism initiatives, and pushing kind of the roadshow around these main ideas.
Nice. I like that. Behrman, did you go yet for this one?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Go ahead.
Yes. So if you can find the volunteer form on my website, kudos to you. It's impossible to find. It's probably not even there. But if you can find it, I will give you $100. No, I will give you $250.
I gotta go. I gotta check it out. Hold on.
I think Mike's gonna get it. But no, like really, we're not recruiting volunteers because we're first of all, the people who are going to support me are from a very small minority. These are the people who truly believe in freedom and liberty around everything. The rest of the country needs to be shown what freedom and liberty can do for them. They're not ready to be volunteers. And so we need to think smarter, not harder. And in order to reach 200 million people with a new idea and really get them to understand it and grab it, we have to approach them from different angles, with issues that they really care about. And you know, we can't do this with just you know, creating a bunch of volunteer groups and running around saying, hey, vote for this guy for president. You really need a bunch of strategic organizations with messaging. And I really like what Aaron was talking about, like his books and everything, because that's really a big part of it. You need to go out there and change the culture and teach people to do things that are going to shake up the system and give us our freedom back. Because the reality is we don't need to change the government. We just need to start ignoring them and they'll go away.
I like it. I like it a lot. Next question actually came from a conversation I had after last week's show with my guest spouse. Happens to be a member of one of your guys' teams, but that's okay. It's not an unfair question, I promise. How can your supporters pitch you elevator pitch style to their parents sitting around the dinner table? So I need something that's not going to bore them, something that's not extreme or crazy. Imagine your supporters have to explain why they're supporting you to their like passively political parents.
I can go right now. And you know, as much as I want to get the parents' votes, the more interesting thing is how we're going to get your younger siblings and your kids' votes in Gen Z. But let's talk about what my elevator pitch is. First and foremost, I'm a contrast to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I'm half their age. I'm somebody who has had to live through the last 20 years and what that means for what government's done. So when we talk about foreign wars and the post 9/11 security state, it's my generation that's had to fight those wars and had to grow up in that post 9/11 security state. When we talk about how unaffordable homes are for new home buyers, it's my generation that had to suffer through the worst, you know, home crisis in our lifetimes in 2008. We're still suffering from that. When it comes to, you know, educational choices and being able to control the education of our children as opposed to government, it's our kids that are the generation who is being most affected by that right now. And so I think it's time that we have messengers who are from the millennial generation who are ready to speak loud and clear that we are sick and tired of what's been happening our entire adult lives, and that it's 2 generations, 3 generations back even, that's been doing this and wrecking our country. And it's their fault that we have this, you know, upcoming $35 trillion debt now that we've had the debt ceiling deal passed by the duopoly. It's our generation that's going to have to suffer those consequences. And so my elevator pitch is that, you know, for the last 30 or 40 years, we've been having one generation that's been in charge of Washington, D.C. It's about time that we have a new generation of messengers, particularly somebody who's going to be breaking through the duopoly. And I'm doing so in a way that doesn't just necessarily talk about how bad the others are. I'm talking about liberty in terms of an empathic, positive building that positive brand recognition. So if your parents want to vote for me, they're going to be voting for messenger, somebody who has energy and enthusiasm that the 2 old fogies of the old parties don't have, and somebody who's ready and willing to speak truth to power, because I've done it before in my race for the U.S. Senate. So that's my elevator pitch.
I'm not getting the 250. Damn.
She's on my team.
Well, I guess my elevator pitch to the older generation has been, has there ever been a politician that didn't let you down? You know, I look at it, I'm coming at it from the Republican side, although when I say I am running as a Republican, but I'm actually a small L libertarian. I've actually been a lifetime member of the Libertarian Party for a decade. I went to my first Libertarian Party event when I was 18. I have tried, and I've played around. I've run as an independent. I've run as a libertarian. Now I'm running as a Republican, mainly for ballot access reasons. But I've dealt with a lot of older folks in the Republican Party, and they have been let down time and time again. Whether it was the Tea Party, which remember all the enthusiasm after Obamacare and all the town hall meetings, and everybody was all riled up. And there was this big Tea Party backlash. Then it got integrated into the Republican Party and quashed. Then you had Trump, who was going to drain the swamp and make America great and all this other stuff, and it didn't happen. And so my message is, I'm not going to solve any of these things either, because the problem is systemic. If we're going to fix what's going on, it starts with radical noncompliance. It starts with the voter being willing to say no. And that is my pitch. My pitch is, I'm not going to solve anything unless you're willing to stand up for yourself, whether that's medical tyranny or the corrupt banking system, all of these other things. These things can be solved by individual action. To be honest, the president has very little ability at this point to do anything. And in particular, if you look at the outcome, you're going to have gridlock. There's really no model here where there's going to be one party with a supermajority. And even if one party had a supermajority, most of these people are sellouts anyway. So you're not going to be able to chip away at the infrastructure or chip away at the deep state. This all comes down to radical noncompliance. And that is my message.
I love it. Dan, how should I pitch you to my parents?
I feel like this is kind of a cheap question. So, if my wife was like, before I met her parents, if she was like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to my parents, should I tell them something about you first? I would just be like, no, let me meet your parents. It's kind of a weird question.
You haven't met them yet?
I have. I'm saying retroactively. I don't know. Anyways, point is, first of all, how many parents are going to vote on somebody because their crazy, entitled little kids are coming and telling them who to vote for, right? That's not how it works. Realistically, we can't expect, okay, we're just going to indoctrinate, the youngest generation, and they're going to go and we're going to get all these free votes from their parents. Not going to work. Maybe it's worked in the past in some weird circumstances, but that's not how it works. We need to go talk to their parents. And this is the thing, the other part of the question is what's this grand, broad elevator pitch that's going to get everybody's attention? Everybody, as diverse as the country is, they're going to hear this one generic elevator pitch and they're going to be like, oh, I like that guy. No, people have been paying attention to politics. People used to hate politics, but that's all they hear now. It's on their TV 24/7. It's all they care about. And there is an issue that every single American is ready to murder some politician over. So if you split up your messages and you do targeted marketing towards the people in these different in these different sections with different messages and different problems that they're facing in their lives with solutions to those problems, whatever they are, they will listen to you. That's all they're doing. They're sitting there with their hands out. Somebody please give us a solution. And all they hear is oh, we're going to print some money. That'll do it. And so well, okay, I guess that's the only option. Let's see how it works again.
Yeah.
It worked last time. Maybe it'll work this time.
I mean, I have to play devil's advocate a little bit with that, because I successfully sold my parents on Gary Johnson and then Larry Sharpe and Joe Jorgensen so successfully that I gave up on Larry Sharpe's write-in campaign in 22, and my mom still wrote both Larry Sharpe and Tom Queter in for the 2022 election, even though we didn't even have ballot access. I didn't even have to tell her to do that. She's never registered LP. She's never been to a meeting. She just met her first Libertarian politician a month ago because Larry came to town and did an event. But
yep,
they're very.
Anecdotal. I mean, a lot of people got their parents to vote for Vermin Supreme, but that's not going to break the election.
Yeah. So my pitch would go something like this. Lars is a regular guy. Lars understands us. Lars understands that people are suffering and hurting in America, and he wants a system that is fair and equal for all people in America. Lars is different. We need to do something different. We can't keep voting for the duopoly. We have to do something different. We keep voting for the same thing over and over again my entire life and expecting different results, and we're never going to get different results. The duopoly is going to continue to hand us the same exact thing over and over. They're the same party. They're the party of the corporations. and they're run by the corporations. And if we ever expect to break out of it, we have to do something different. And that is where a third party or independent candidate comes in. And in order to get the third party or independent candidate to become elected, we have to reform our whole election process. Ballot access is totally broken, right? We need ranked choice voting. We needed term limits in the House and the Congress, so that we can get rid of the career politicians. We need structural reforms in our government if we're ever going to change anything. Otherwise, it's just the same thing over and over again, endless printing of more money, endless debt, until the system just collapses and breaks. And you know who's going to get stuck holding the bag when it breaks? The regular working class folks of America. That's who's going to get stuck. It's not the bankers and it's not the corporations. It's going to be the people who have their money in the bank, and then the bank goes bust, and then they don't have their money anymore. And they can't buy food, and they can't put gas on their table. And that's what I'm about.
Food on the table, not gas on the table. That would light the table on fire there, Lars.
Gas. I mean, it might be fun. It might be fun to light your table on fire.
It's like the room's on fire, and this is fine. It's just putting gas on the table.
Hey, I got that guy on my pin.
I love it.
All right, David.
Yeah.
Don't take this wrong, because I think everyone here, with the exception of Aaron, knows I love you guys. Okay. But it does need to be said that those were 4 terrible answers. The question is, how are we going to convince David's parents? And I got to tell you, it's not going to be by saying we got to break the system, or your generation sucks, we need a new generation, or I'm the right guy. And, you know, I probably am the right guy from the standpoint of the background that the older generation is looking for, and I wouldn't even lead with that. You've got to tell people the truth, which is, we understand why you're so disappointed and upset, because your parties that you used to believe in both suck. If you grew up a Republican and you've remained one the past several decades, you've got nothing but disappointment on your hands, because your party is no longer fiscally conservative. It spends money like an old Democrat. You know that, strategically speaking, war doesn't work and it stinks. And if you grew up a Democrat and you remained one the past couple of decades, you know that your party's not standing up against the war machine. Your party doesn't any longer stand for anything reasonably proximate to liberalism. You people are in violation of the First Amendment every day of the week and go around canceling each other. You know that these are not the values that you want represented in your leadership. We as libertarians are what you believe in, what you've always believed in. You've been let down by the system and by your parties, and now you've got a government that is too big, too stupid, and too unethical to represent your values. You need someone that wants what you want, which is to get back to a delimited government, to stand up for democratic principles, and to make it happen. That's what these people want. They don't want to be told, you know, wreck the system, your generation sucks, or I'm the right guy.
So I just want to give one bit of pushback. As I travel across the country, I run into Gen Xers and Boomers all the time who say my generation sucks and that we dropped the ball, and that the people who are in charge of our generation in Washington have dropped the ball. Even down to talk to an 80-year-old former
Well, that's
vet.
your pitch? Your pitch is going to be, you're
Well, no,
right, your generation
my
sucks?
pitch is that we need something new, and that what we've had for the last 20 years ain't cutting it. And that's not just Republican Democrats, that's also our libertarian messaging. If the state sucks was going to be a winning message for libertarians, and just how bad the state is, which is what we've mostly had for the last 20 years, it would have happened by now. What we need is a new type of messaging, one that's more empathic and positive and uplifting, that gives people hope that with liberty comes prosperity and can be a better future, not just talking about how terrible things are right now, which is what sadly too many times independents and libertarians, other third parties, fall into this nihilistic, well, it's all just terrible, it can never be improved, it will never be solved. And I just refused it. We have to have idealism, and we have to have a little bit of hopefulness, like that we can
Agreed.
improve
We
these
need
things.
to lead with
Otherwise, what the hell are we doing?
transformational change, but transformational change isn't let a younger person make stupid decisions instead of an older person. You've got to tell them why your changes are important and different. And that starts with understanding what the problems are and what the disappointment is. David asked how to convince his parents, not his kids.
Yeah, well, I assume David's parents are Gen Xers, right? And you know, I think, you know, many of them are ready to see something new. And the last time that we had somebody, I mean, let's be real, not Biden, but Trump, Clinton, and George W. Bush were all born during the same summer. It's something about that summer has really screwed this country up. And it's time that we have younger and new generations of leadership across the board. And that's nothing that's nothing against anybody here who's not a millennial. Like, I'm just saying that that's my particular messaging pill, is that, you know, with a new, fresh kind of mindset can come new ideas and new solutions that we really haven't tackled.
There's no question we need new ideas. I just wouldn't lead with ID politics.
Yeah, and people want to know that the people that they're going to be voting for understand them and feel how they're feeling. Right now, the people in America feel the politicians are out of touch, and that was my point, is that I'm just a regular guy. They can relate to me. They can relate to the understanding that I know people are suffering right now under inflation, under high taxes, under, you know, bureaucracy and regulation, and they want somebody that they can relate to, and I'm that guy.
But Lars, yeah, they hate politicians, but like, if you look at the track record of all the politicians, they keep getting elected because and it's not because they think all politicians are out of touch. It's every politician except for the ones that they're voting for. So
it's the system. It's the system.
No,
the system is broken.
Yeah. There are millions of people out there supporting Bernie Sanders and AOC and Trump and DeSantis and all these other crazy people with all these crazy ideas. They think that these politicians, even though they know they're politicians, even though they know their track record, they think that they are the next best thing and they're going to fix everything. And that's because these people are, it's not about which politicians, it's about, they think these are the people they trust because these are the people who are giving them solutions about the things that they care about. And that's the most important thing. I don't know David's parents. I don't know what they care about. I know plenty of people who are his parents' age who are probably pro-war, and I know there are probably some who are anti-war. And if you don't find the right message for those people and talk to them on what their most important issue is, you're never going to connect with them.
So I'm going to rein this back in real quick, and I will anecdotally back Chase up real quick and say that I have definitely heard the "our generation fucked you guys over" rhetoric from Gen Xers to millennials like myself. So I don't know how big of a population within Gen X that message resonates with, but I definitely have experienced it quite a few times. So it exists. I'll say that at least. But I'm going to transition. Tell me about every major endorsement that you've gotten so far, if you've gotten any.
I haven't gotten any major endorsements, but I'm making endorsements. So I'm not really like out there seeking major endorsements quite yet. I think it's a little early in the game for that, particularly for us libertarians that are running. You know, we have a long road to hoe, and I don't think people are ready to just jump in and endorse, considering that, you know, let's be realistic, the field might not even be settled yet. But what I'm doing right now is I'm going out and I'm endorsing candidates all over the country who are running for office. I just got done endorsing, you know, Nathan Slusher down in Brevard County, Florida, who's running for county commission. I've endorsed Clinton Cowart, who's running for Savannah City Alderman. I just recently endorsed Ryan Searcy, who's running for U.S. Senate in Washington. All up and down the ballot, I think it's important for, and this is particular to me, Lars, and Mike, who are running for the Libertarian nomination. It's important for whoever of us who ends up with this thing, and I'm going to manifest that it's going to be me right now. I'm just going to put that out there. If it's, you know, when it's me, right? I think we should all be in that mindset. When it's me, we're going to have to be supporting candidates all up and down the ballot. And so it's not really so much about what candidate or caucus can get me to endorse. Once we have that nomination, it's about shining the light on those local candidates, particularly ones in very winnable two-way races, so we can get libertarians elected, create that bench of talent, and start growing from the grassroots up. So yeah, I think if we're focusing on trying to get people to endorse us right now when the field's not even quite settled, I think it's a little premature for that, but we can go ahead. All of us can start supporting local candidates, regardless of party. You know, if you're independent of a party or if you're running as a Republican, find those local candidates to support as a presidential candidate and bring the spotlight to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any major people backing me, but I've had a number of people tell me that they want to back me, but they can't announce it yet because it's too early and they want to have, you know, some cover for whatever that is that they're doing. So that's the thing. But, you know, I also have done some of my own endorsements. I signed the Fair Tax Pledge and I put out a press release about that. I signed a term limits pledge, and I'm putting out a press release about that. I'm a heavy backer of ranked choice voting. They don't have a pledge, but if they had one, I would sign it. And so I'm doing things like that. And I also, it's really awesome when you're on social media and people are, hundreds of people are saying, Lars, you're the guy I want to vote for. You're the person that you've got my vote, which is like, it really makes me feel good that I'm really onto something when I have a lot of people saying that I'm the guy that they're choosing to vote for. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm not seeking endorsements either. I in the past I've run organizations that gave endorsements. So I either ran, a super PAC, or I ran the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire. And in this particular situation, I'm explicitly not seeking out political endorsements, because usually those have strings attached, or it's somebody looking for some kind of favor down the line. So I'm kind of more trying to take my message directly to the people at this point, and that's something that I'll deal with much further along in the process, probably not until the fourth quarter, to be honest, based on how early we are in this. Having worked on a number of elections, for instance, in New Hampshire, I know people really aren't thinking about this until like 6 weeks before the first primary. Like right now is really, it might mean a lot to us what's going on with the activity, but it's kind of dead in terms of capturing a lot of mind space for the average voter. Who knows what people are going to be concerned about 6 weeks out before the primary. And whatever people are talking about right now is probably not going to be what they're talking about at that point in time.
Fair enough. Anybody
David,
else?
I think it's worth mentioning that although some of the people that you would like to have make endorsements by now are probably, sitting on the sidelines, as the other fellas just said, but I gotta say, I'm very proud of the folks that have already come on our team that represent local leadership in some very important ways. Guys in Florida like Josh Lavka, who's the chair down there now, and Michael Smith, people like Tara Fisher in New Jersey, David Roberson in Texas, Stratton Lobdell in North Carolina, Katrina Rocco, Wendy Jabo in New York, Dan Donnelly. These are very, very important people. I bothered to mention some New Yorkers for you there. And they're all over the place, right? But these are very important people at the local level, and they're not the kinds of names that everyone who can hear us right now would recognize, but they're the kinds of people who make things happen. And for that reason, I'm very proud of them and grateful.
Yeah. Everyone who does recognize one of those names, it means something, that's for sure. All right, tell me about your guys, or Dan, do you have any endorsements? I'm assuming you have a similar answer to Aaron.
No, yeah, I'm not looking for endorsement. I guess all I can say is in 2020, I was on the FEC's top 10 fundraisers. I was number 8. And in 2024, I'm going to be number 1.
All right. I like it. Tell me about your guys' social media presences. I know it's been mentioned a little bit already, especially in Lars's opening kind of statement. But tell me, do you have one that you use significantly more that has a really good following? If you can give me some actual follower numbers, that would be super great.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, Lars, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go at it. So yeah, obviously social media is one of my expertise areas, and so I've been actively pushing mostly on Facebook because it's the thing that I knew the most about, and so I've gotten 31,000-ish followers on there, and we're growing about 1,000 followers a month right now, and without really getting any media attention. So once we get some more media attention, I expect that to grow significantly. But recently I've been really pushing on Twitter, and I expect that within the next maybe month or so, I'll have the most Twitter followers of any of the candidates up here, except for I'm not sure about Aaron and Dan, but yeah, so that's been really good. And the metrics are amazing. Like I said, 17 million people reached, I'm reaching 1 million plus people on Twitter a week right now. So it's quite exciting. And I just look to really ramp that up with more ad spend. And that's what I'm going to be I'm going to be pushing heavily in my campaign, especially after winning the nomination, to just really push that message out there. I think we can reach every American with our messaging through social media way more than we could if we were, say, in parks, giving little speeches in parks all around the country.
Yeah, so I'm happy to speak with where I'm at right now. So in terms of social media, first off, I got a great social media team and a process to get social media out quickly in terms of professionalized graphics and basically looking our best and being able to hit those algorithms the best way possible. Right now, I'm at 10.2 thousand followers on Twitter. That is with zero paid promotion or anything like that. That's all organic growth. I've doubled my Facebook from and for Senate, I'm now over 2,000 and continuing to grow there on Facebook. Instagram is growing. The biggest new thing that we're tapping into now is TikTok, trying to get into TikTok, follow Chase Oliver for president on TikTok. We're putting content out there now, again, speaking to Gen Z. But in reality, we have done all organic growth. We've done no paid promotion at this point. That is kind of second phase for this campaign. Right now, we're still in phase 1, moving into phase 2 pretty shortly. So once that happens, I imagine those numbers are going to go up. But our impression rate is really, really good in terms of per post by followers. We get pretty high impression rate compared to a lot of other folks. And a lot of that comes from my Senate campaign, just moving right into a presidential campaign. I kept things active. I kept talking, and I have not let up yet. And I'm using that to call libertarians to actually get off of the internet and be visible outside of the online space and be actually visible outwardly. Let's touch some grass. Let's go speak some truth to power. And I encourage people right now, get out June 5th to speak out against Cop City in Atlanta. I encourage everybody here to support that as well. Get out and be visible in your community in addition to that online platform.
True that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go next. I'm with Chase. I don't believe that it's appropriate, honestly, to be dropping money on advertising outside of our party yet. Honestly, I think it's not a good way to spend money this early. I know, Lars, you and I disagree about that. You mentioned in the last discussion you had dropped $70,000 on driving people to the Facebook page. I just think it's more important to build out the team and get ready for, as Chase puts it, phase 2. I appreciated what Chase said about grass touching. Yeah, we're somewhere on the order of, I know we went past 5,000 Facebook people some months ago. I don't know exactly the number on Facebook right now. We're only at a few thousand people on Twitter, a couple thousand people on Instagram, and only recently got into TikTok. We don't have a giant social media presence right now. We're coming out with a couple of important announcements in the summertime that I know are going to drive that a little bit. So I'm totally unworried about that. Most important thing to do now is to build the machine, build the team, and get ready to take advantage of some really explosive things happening in the fall. So I'm actually very, very pleased and very excited about where we are, particularly team-wise. Speaking of answering David's question, LaMichael Wilson of Tennessee and Irene Mavrikakis of Delaware, speaking of big-time leaders, have joined the campaign and are going to be contributing in the social media area. So we're uber excited about that.
And hey, don't mean to interrupt anybody, but I got to say this because it's getting late and I was told she would not go to sleep until I said it. So Chase is on the case. I've now said the line from Paw Patrol, you can now go to sleep now. So sorry, I just had to break, and I just realized it was after 10 p.m. and she's young. She needs to go to sleep. So Chase is on the case. You're good now.
That's adorable.
Yeah, I think, just to clap back a little bit at what Mike said is, I think that, we can have great messaging, but if you don't reach anybody, the messaging is just being shouted into an empty space. And so for me, getting the most followers possible, that's how I was successful. That's how, I sold a business for $500 million, is you get the most eyeballs possible, and then you grow and you get your message out there. And so I clap back at that a little bit. I think we should be spending as much money as possible and growing those social medias as big as we can, because the message of liberty needs to get out there. And that's the only way that we can do it. Nobody here is getting on Fox or CNN right now. And so the only way that we can reach the masses right now is social media. So we need to be pumping that hard.
Well, that's all true, but if that were completely true, you would have spent the $70,000 on messaging last year. The reason you're spending it now is because we're in a race for the presidential nomination. And
actually, I started
whole
spending the
point-
money. Actually, I started spending the money on pretty much day one, and I filed 2 years ago. So I've been running campaign ads for 2 years now.
Yeah, I'll back Lars up.
Yeah, I
saw
don't
his
mean
ads.
in the context of the nomination. If you want to spend $70,000 on social media messaging, you don't need a presidential campaign to do that. The reason we're in this campaign is because there's something different about it. What's
yeah, but the thing is when you're running for president, you have authority that is given to you. If you're just running for mayor or city council or something, nobody pays any attention to you, right? So running for president, having Lars for president on top of the page and getting 17 million people to see that makes that something, right? So people know what's going on. And David was just about to say, he's been seeing my ads since the very beginning. And lots of people have said that. They're like, who's this Lars guy, right? Who's the, oh, there he is again. And every day people are seeing me on social media multiple times a day. And so I'm on their minds all the time.
Well, I want to just real quick,
both Fox and CNN in the last 6 months.
Yeah, I was gonna say that first of all, but secondly, I think Lars, in your response, you kind of outed yourself and like kind of gave the real difference here is the fact that you're mostly self-funding your campaign, and so I think with that in mind, the ethics of how you spend your money change. And so I agree with Mike that because he's mostly like donor funded and people are giving to his
Mike
campaign.
took out a loan for $100,000 on his house and put that in his campaign, and he's not mostly self-funded.
I'm mostly self-funded. Okay. That's right.
That is true. I forgot that you also were, Mike. But I guess to the other people who would be spending, you know, other people's small donations for those ad spends, I think I would agree with Mike that is irresponsible. But for you to do it, who's spending your own money, or even for Mike to do it, I think is significantly less irresponsible, because that money, you know, that money doesn't go super far at the very beginning. And for people to be giving you $5-10 a month and having it just get sunk into Facebook ads, that would be kind of depressing to me. But for someone, I think, that has a very different funding style for the campaign, it's a different set of rules. But I want to let Dan talk about this issue specifically because he's run non-political marketing campaigns, which he's already mentioned, with like taxation is theft and some other things, as well as campaign accounts. So Dan, what's your take on kind of the difference?
Yeah, I'm not putting too much money into social media. On Facebook, when I was running a presidential campaign, they shut me down. If you ever tried to escalate to customer service through Facebook, even when you're giving them money, it's next to impossible. But I got through twice. They told me it was a mistake that my ad account was suspended, and finally, the third time they said that it could not be appealed, and that was that. So I don't really want to give them money for any of my businesses. On Twitter, I can't even pay for a blue check mark. And so, you know, I use Twitter. I've got maybe 10,000, 12,000 followers on there. I use it mostly for shit posting and telling people how not to pay income tax. And I'm sure that gets me a lot of, I'm on a lot of blacklists for that. But as far as the content that I've produced, I posted a video explaining about the income tax and why most people don't have to pay it. That went viral and got 6 million views. That was before I started running the presidential campaign. And that got my page 60 or 70,000 followers without spending a penny. So there's stuff that you can do out there with social media, but you don't want to tie it to a political account because everyone right now is afraid of politics. But like I've been saying, if you forget about these personal campaigns, like to vote for a person, and this is what we need our Liberty community to do. And I think Aaron's kind of been talking about this, where you need to create smaller organizations that are hyper focused on solutions to problems. And when you get people to get excited about these single issues, you're going to get organic growth, because that's all. They don't care who's running it. They don't care. All they care about is it's a great solution, and they're going to magnetize themselves to it, and they're going to spread the word. And when you create these organizations, and then you, as the person who are controlling these organizations, and I have a couple of them that I started as experiments, and they work great. but we need more people in the Liberty community to do this, because I can't run them all myself. There's 100 different organizations we need to create, and they all need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And when we do that, whoever gets the nomination for the Libertarian Party, or whoever's running as an independent, if these 100 organizations all get together and say, I'm going to tell my 100,000 people to vote for this guy because he cares about the issue that we've been talking about for the last year and a half, they're going to do it. And you don't need that presidential candidate to run around and talk to 100 million people and get them to follow their page. It's cross-pollination of these audiences that you've created. And it's almost like an endorsement. But here's the thing: while a lot of these organizations already exist in like the Democrat community, they don't endorse libertarians. They're very Nick Wildstar will tell you, he's black, he's in California, he went to a BLM protest and he wanted to promote that he was running for mayor, and they wouldn't let him in because he wasn't a Democrat. Like, this is how tightly and I hear people like, oh, why don't we just get like Normal and some of these organizations? It doesn't work like that. They're already politicized. People don't realize how politicized these organizations are. So we need to build our own community of, if we want to create alternatives to government programs, or if we want to create solutions to the problems that government has created, we need to create these as individual organizations that attract only the people who care about that issue, and then use those organizations to endorse people who are willing to make the political change, who are willing to stand in office and do the changes necessary to implement those plans.
Yeah, I'll say I think this is probably the one episode where I would disagree with a rant like that, just because this is specifically for the people. Because I do still think it's a both and. We need those candidates to then point all of those organizations to, and in my mind, this is a conversation about like which candidate should that be, right? So I think that both sides of that coin are very necessary, although I spend a lot of my time pushing people towards the other side of the coin that you were just arguing for. If people watch any other episodes of this show, I 100% agree. Aaron, what is your social media like?
So I've been using social media really heavily for, over a decade for various political activism. So I have the same Facebook page that I've used to run for U.S. Senate and for governor. And I did some really creative things when I ran for governor. I rented a couple of meme trucks that actually had a bunch of libertarian memes on them, and then drove them by the polling places playing loud, interesting music. And so I basically took the most popular Liberty memes from my Facebook page and basically ran those on the meme trucks. But a couple of things have happened. One, I spent 140 days in Facebook jail last year. If you actually look at my platform, which is not only just calling for a bank run, but I'm also against the medical tyranny and public health depopulation cult, I can't post my platform on Facebook. I've gotten so many strikes on Facebook. I can't trust this platform, and I won't give them any money. So even though I was generating a few million impressions, I used to generate a few million impressions organically, and then sometimes I would augment that with ads. So I'm not doing anything on Facebook. I am focusing my efforts on Twitter. At least for the time being, there's some free speech. We'll see. I think the jury's out on that. Yeah. But I am focusing on creating, because again, I have specific themes. So for instance, with this bank run concept, I have something called the Bank Run Manifesto. That's generated 785,000 organic views. I'm generating 3 to 5 million impressions organically through Twitter, and I am going to amplify content. So it's not me running ads about myself. I may be doing videos or putting out detailed content. Like for instance, I have a thread about the historical failure of fiat currency, and it goes through in the thread and shows 10 different examples of the failure of fiat currency. That thread has 250,000 views. So now that I have finished this book, I'm going to be generating a lot of high quality content around that, and then using a combination of, whatever happens organically, and then boosting that with ads. That's going to be my primary message. But I want this to be, at least in the near term, about promoting these ideas as much as it is about promoting me, although I'm doing it under the banner of a presidential campaign, which you have to go through a special process, fill out the form, show them your FEC information and all that other stuff to even be able to do that. I was not able to even buy ads for 8 years and only resolved it a week ago. So just as an FYI on that.
I think you just broke Dan Behrman's heart a little bit when you said FEC forms.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So, Dan, you kind of jumped the gun a little bit on my next question. And I know I already talked about endorsements, and no one's really gotten any official endorsements. But I want to talk about, have you guys done any work with or work to maybe solidify a future endorsement, or helped get involved with any of these single issue organizations like Normal or the Firearms Policy Coalition or anything like that? Anybody?
Yeah, don't everybody jump in all at once. Well, I can say right now, by being a visible libertarian, actually campaigning not just within libertarian conventions, but I'm going to start being visible outside of the convention circuit this next month. Pride Month and Juneteenth coming up. They're excellent outreach opportunities where there are lots and lots of people who are able to hear a message, right? So I want to get out in the world and kind of speak our message outward a little bit over the next few months while we don't have a ton of conventions going on for us libertarians. But in terms of what am I doing to build those endorsements, I'm putting in the work. I am traveling the miles down the road. I'm being a visible candidate. I am showing that I have the energy and enthusiasm to do this, and that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and that I'm able to keep going the distance. And I think that's what's going to be ultimately deciding what people endorse us for, is like doing the job of being a candidate. Who is actually putting in the work? Who is actually putting in the sweat equity that it takes to be a presidential candidate? Who's going to be the person who's able to work, to travel thousands of miles, be in multiple different cities, waking up and going, okay, which city am I in today? That kind of mindset is something that you have to have as a candidate. I did it as a statewide candidate in particular, and now I'm kind of doing that all over the country. But that's what's going to take to get an endorsement, I think, from most of the major serious people who we want to be getting endorsements from. They want to see proof of concept. They want to see that we're actually putting in the miles and doing the work. So, and I can say that I've seen some of these people as I travel around the country pretty often. I see Mike pretty often, almost every weekend. I see Lars pretty regularly throughout this circuit, doing the Libertarian Convention circuit. We're putting in the miles now. I think I do want to say this, of everybody who's here, we're running early and doing the job now, as opposed to people who are going to be trying to jump or two before convention. Oh, well, I got a name, or I whatever. I respect that far less than the people who are on this panel right now, who are putting in the work and putting in the miles right now. Across the board, I think that's what's going to be looked towards for what gets us an endorsement, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also sometimes the organizations that you want to endorse you will not endorse any political candidate because they want to be agnostic to politics, right? They want to push their agenda, but they don't want to, especially endorsing a duopoly candidate and lose 50% of the people on whatever coalition that they're trying to build. So I think that is important to understand. And, of course, I think it's also, like we said earlier, it's a little bit too early to be really getting the endorsements, but I think as we kind of mature and we get closer to the election, the primaries, you're going to see more endorsements come out for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, you looked like you were going to jump in.
Thanks, David. I appreciated what Chase said about the hard work, because he's right, and I do think that matters. Two other things I was going to say is, number one, I hope you didn't mean to hurt the feelings of the 10 people who I named and then said no one's got any major endorsements. I thought that was a pretty impressive list, actually. So, if that didn't impress you, maybe I should add Jim Turney, a former LNC chair, and Lee Kloritzer, a former regional rep to the LNC, just to see if I can get some more straws on your camel's back to finally admit that I've got a pretty robust endorsement list. But having said that, your question was, what are we doing to work hard at getting future endorsements? I can tell you that I'm working really hard at reaching out to the police community, and no, they will not be endorsing me. But as long as nobody shoots me, I figure I'm doing okay, because my reform is a little robust for the appetites of most cops, but I think that we're making good progress. The other front on which I think I'm making some progress is in financial services and crypto. I've had a couple of podcasts on crypto, a couple of articles, Yahoo Finance, for example, and a couple of other places where I'm able to leverage my background and expertise as an economist and in banking and financial services in particular. So I'm optimistic that that's going to help going forward.
Like it. Aaron, are you looking to get any organization? I know you said you're not really looking for too many organizations, but you think you're going to get like maybe at least the Free State Project?
Well, so I've run a bunch of organizations that endorsed and supported candidates, and we are not anywhere near the time where they even roll out a process. Usually there are like candidate questionnaires and all that other stuff. We're not even at that point yet.
Yeah.
So so I know how it works. I'm not doing any of it for the second quarter, and I'm not doing any of it for the third quarter because I am laser focused on, again, the content and getting the content out there. And I do believe that this bank run concept is going to be it might not be on people's radar right now, but we're in the middle of a banking collapse. And when people find out how fast CBDC is being rolled out, there will be over 1 billion people on CBDC by the end of the year. Every G7 nation has been working on a CBDC. The United States has actually conducted 3 CBDC pilots. There are a lot of people you'll see in the news that say, well, technology's far off. We haven't even decided on this. They've already done a pilot. They've done a 2-year pilot. Technology's sitting on the shelf. Mm-hmm. So I believe this is going to become the issue. So I'm going all in on communicating in excruciating detail what is going on in terms of the arc of CBDC and the simultaneous failure of fiat, and why self-custody options and why people taking control of their own financial destiny is the way out, because no politician is going to, we could be elected president. You still can't end the Fed. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm sure we're excited about hearing Ron
That is
Paul.
Not true. I got to fact check that. We'll come back to it. Put a pin in it.
I'd love to see that's fine.
Okay.
There's no practical solution for actually ending the Fed through the political process, given
Put
Congress.
a pin in it, David.
All right. We'll come back to that. I will say that I think you're probably doing yourself a favor, Aaron, by not reaching out. Considering like you're speaking from experience, I also feel like if anybody's reaching out to me to ask for something that I can't give them, I automatically don't want to give them it, even when I have the ability to later on down the road. So if somebody's blowing up my one of my employees saying, give me an endorsement, and it's like, no, I can't. Give me 6 months, then I'll give you a questionnaire, and then we can talk from there. You're probably doing yourself a major favor there.
Dude, I gotta say this, like, because we're still talking about endorsements, and I'm just like, I really don't see much point in it, because, like, we've all seen these videos.
Wasn't that just your whole pitch? Was that we need all of these organizations to endorse?
Well, not the existing organizations, because look, here's the thing, right? We've all seen these videos where you've got like some guy running around, Jimmy Kimmel, like asking people like, oh, who'd you vote for? And they're like, oh, I voted for Trump, or I voted for Biden. And, oh, well, which policy did you like, right? No, that guy would never ask those questions. But like the alternative media asks like, well, which policy do you like about this guy? Did you know that so-and-so voted for, like, nobody knows anything about these people, right? And if you're running around trying to get people to endorse people just because like, oh, it's some celebrity who endorsed us, or like some famous person, this, that, it's like, that's how you get a culture of people who are voting for somebody just because somebody told them to, instead of people who are actually educated about policies. And so this is why, like, it's more important, like those organizations, like, yeah, they'll endorse candidates to get them in, but the real work is done in those organizations. That's where you change the culture. That's where you educate people to think differently and understand that all these policies that are being put forth are wrong. And like, if you just focus around like, okay, let's just get somebody into office, whatever it takes, you're gonna end up with the same thing. You're giving them absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like that's what we're heading for. We got to stay clear of that stuff and understand that what we need to focus on is a culture change.
I will say, I don't think we're ever going to red pill everybody to care about political policy. And eventually, if we want any sort of anything close to a victory,
we're already there.
We need.
We're already there. I mean, look, they don't like the policies that we like, but they have a policy that they like, don't they? Tell me you can find one American who doesn't think we should close the border or open the border or have free healthcare or end the welfare state. Tell me there's somebody you know who doesn't have an opinion about some policy, whether we should print more money or not, whether we should increase the minimum wage. all these other things.
I'd argue a lot of people are too busy living their lives and doing their jobs to worry about a lot of hardcore policy minutia. Let's be real about it.
Coming on them right now, and they can't afford eggs.
Well,
yeah,
that and it's also surface, right? It's also surface. It's basically what they've been told by the media, right? If you ask them if you push them on their policy and say, why do you want the borders closed or why do you want the borders open? They don't really have an idea of why that is, other than the feelings of whatever it is that's that's causing them harm or causing them fear. But other than that, they don't actually understand policy for the most part. People just listen
to those beliefs. They were intentional. Somebody
Correct.
went to them and put that idea in their head and said,
Correct.
this is going to solve your problem. That's exactly what happened. And we're not doing that, at least not at a big enough scale to where it's effective.
So I'm going to be the idealist here and say that actually things are getting better with this regard, that more and more people are actually waking up to stuff. And that has to do with the major generational change and the arrival of social media and the arrival of independent media. It's a lot easier for people to be able to go out and reach out and find information and form their own opinion and not merely be fed the mainstream line. I think we just need to be encouraging more avenues like that. And to break those attitudes down. Like that's how you break through the static, is you have to provide something that's starkly different and then use whatever channels you can to break through. So if you're talking about like, yeah, voters don't care about individual policy initiatives all the time. That's true. There's a major psychology issue when it comes to how we run for office. There's 3 ways to run for office, right? Like the general notion. You can be a policy wonk, which if you can get people to pay attention, good on you. You're very compelling if you can. It's very hard to get people to pay attention to a policy wonk campaign. You can have fear. Fear is what a lot of candidates have run on. Fear of the other, fear of something that's different from themselves. Fear works great for a short period of time. It has a very quick half-life. It can burn out very quickly and can actually torch down the people who got put in power. And then the most successful way to be able to run for office is to give people something to hope for. It's aspirational, something that provides them a key to like, hey, what is this going to do for you and your family? How is this going to bring prosperity to you and your community? Those are the campaigns that win. And not all of them are necessarily knee deep in policy minutiae. We can always, I imagine most of us here can get real knee deep in the nitty gritty of policy and be very wonky. But the truth is that's not what the average voter really looks for. And that's not what they're paying attention to. And as Aaron said, most voters don't even pay attention at this point in the game, and most voters, a lot of them make up their mind in the summer of 2024. As amazing as polarized as our time is, those who are undecided, most of them make up their mind in the 3 or 4 months before the election. And so, it's not something that we can really put a finger on right now is like, what's going to make a successful messaging pill, other than the fact that I think being knee deep in policy, it's a great way for us to really, really sound great in an echo chamber. But when you're talking outside of the echo chamber, the further deep policy wonky we get, the easier it is for the voters to ignore us and to just say, well, libertarians or independents, they ain't gonna win, so I'm just gonna go with these other two. We have to provide something different. And I think that's something any of us here really needs to take heed and take warning about, is like, don't try to put people to sleep with echo chamber talking points, because those people are already going to vote for you.
Yeah. I have to mostly agree with what you were just saying, Chase. I think that people, Dan, you're right, that people have an opinion on a lot of those issues, but almost all of those opinions were spoon-fed to them by somebody else, and they still don't actually care, which is what I said.
Exactly.
What I said was that, no, you're not going to get, because you have to get somebody to care about the issue before you can get them to change their mind on it based on actual facts. No, they don't.
That's why they took the spoon. That's why they took the spoon.
But they don't care enough to actually learn facts about it.
Libertarians try to give them a different issue, like the Federal Reserve or something else. I'm saying, no, if they already care about healthcare and they're like all on Bernie Sanders' jock, give them a better solution to healthcare that's going to solve their problem, and they'll pay attention to you. It doesn't even have to be well thought out or intricate plans, or like they need to know all the details. All they have to know is like, okay, this guy wants to fix the healthcare system. That's it.
That's just empathizing.
People's minds can be changed, though. Like, I've talked to a bunch of regular folks. I go to car shows a lot, and so I talk to regular people out at the car shows, and they say, "What have you been up to, Lars?" And I said, "Well, I'm running for president," and they're like, "No way." And then they want to talk to me about stuff, and I said, "Well, what?" They said, "Where are you running?" I said, "I'm running as a libertarian." "Oh, you're a damn liberal." That's the problem with you. You're a damn liberal. And then they say, well, what do you think about this position? And they expect me to give them the liberal position, and I give them a totally different position, and they got this inquisitive look on their face, right? And after about 15 minutes, they're like, you know what? You're kind of okay. I think I would actually vote for you. That seems pretty common sense and fair and reasonable to me. You know, we need more people like you running. And so I think that people's minds can be changed, but the problem is people have limited amount of time to listen to the message, right? And because they're busy with their families, they're busy working. The reason we have such a problem with the voting is you get to you see all this stuff on the voting, and like Chase was saying, you get to like 3 weeks before the election and they start paying any attention to it because they just don't have time to pay attention to it. And imagine, our Congress people don't read the bills that are put before them. So how can we expect the regular citizen to have time, to read the stuff that's put before them? They're not getting paid for it. And our Congress can barely be bothered with reading the stuff.
Look, when I was running my 2020 campaign, I was talking to a lot of like far left Bernie Sanders socialists. And I turned so many of those guys into like hardcore ANCAPs. I was talking to one guy about, he's like, oh yeah, Bernie Sanders, Medicare for all. And I just gave him the talk about insulin. And within 5 minutes, out of his own idea, he was like, well, why don't we abolish the FDA? Like, you don't have to like go, there's no like crazy strategy here. They already have something that they're very opinionated about. All you have to do is tell them, hey, there's another way to solve the problem. And it doesn't involve stealing from people or committing crimes in the name of the government and all this other stuff. And they're yours. That's all you have to do. But you have to, instead of saying who I am and why I'm so great and why you should vote for me, you have to stop and ask them, what do you care about? That's what I haven't heard here. What do you got to stop and ask people because as soon as you know what they care about, they're so easy to turn into libertarians or anarchists or whatever you want to turn them into.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone on this panel is, I mean, no offense, Aaron, I've never seen you work firsthand, but I've watched the other people here campaign firsthand. And I know that I can say that they're all doing a pretty good job at meeting people where they are, empathizing and like figuring out what issues actually matter to them. And I imagine so are you, given the answers you've given so far. So I that is something that I'm really liking out of this slate of people, and even some of the people who aren't here, who are a little bit more popular, like an RFK or a Marianne Williamson, are also doing a lot of that this time around, where they weren't last time around, and it's it's genuinely something that's changing in the political spectrum. Where you watch. It seems icky and more political, but when you're watching people in different interviews give not different answers or conflicting answers, but just very different conversations in the way that they're talking and the way that they're using words to actually empathize with the person they're having a conversation with. When somebody goes from like a Michael Malice interview to a Russell Brand interview, if they sound the same, then they're not doing their job right. And so I think that's something that everyone here is doing a pretty good job of. And I think maybe I might have misunderstood what you were trying to say, Dan, because I do agree with what you're saying about the kind of meeting people where they are and educating them on an issue. I think that there's a good chunk of people who are fired up and passionate and even somewhat educated on the issues, but I still it's like maybe 10% of the country, those Bernie bros that really care about like the environment or healthcare. Those are people who can be won over with facts and logic. Like, I've done a lot of work with environmental groups talking about the libertarian solution to environmental issues, and just ending fossil fuel subsidies is something that almost got me a straight up endorsement from an openly communist organization in New York City. So
okay, wait.
Don't leave with that, David.
Let me just throw this one little one at you. I was at an airport wearing my big yellow hat, and I went to buy a sandwich from like one of these little shops, and there was this woman working there, minimum wage, just like not interested in politics. What does your hat mean? What does taxation and theft mean? Like, she's not interested in politics at all, right? Or at least she'd know, like it or not, she'd know, right? What does that mean? Then I started talking to her about her situation. She's working so she can help her daughter get a student loan so she could go to college. And I started talking to her about how screwed up the student loan program is. And instantly she was like, oh, I want to vote for you, because she's not interested in politics, but there's that issue that she cares about. And I was able to talk to her and educate her on that. So I get what you're saying. And that's our problem. Like, that's the problem with libertarians, right? Because they're hyper educated on like every single little issue, and they want to teach everybody about everything. But there are those people, like, I'm telling you, you can talk to any person. Even if you don't care about politics, politics cares about you. And when you talk to them about their situation, they know that the government is messing with their life if you show them, and they will be open to that and listen to it and hear it out.
Yeah, I have to say, this doesn't fit with the headphones, but I do get a lot of positive responses with the hat. Aaron, I want to hear your take on what we've been talking about, because you're definitely focusing on the educational side of your campaign and doing a really good job at it. So I definitely want to hear your take on what we've been talking about here.
Well, again, I'm running not because, my big desire was to be president or to solve people's problems. I'm running because I actually see that I think we're in the middle of an absolute collapse. I mean, I think the country, if you look at it, we're on the verge of World War III, the stuff that's going on with Russia and Ukraine and the economy. I mean, everybody's aware of the inflation, but what's going on with the banking system, isn't being reported on, of course, by design, but it affects everyone. A Gallup poll just came out that 48% of the American population is actually concerned about the safety of their bank deposits. So this isn't a minor issue, and that problem only gets worse over time. So I actually, because I've lived this issue, because I jumped out of politics and then jumped out of fiat currency and have been living off of crypto and have been following this, I'm looking at the trends here, and I'm looking at the crackdown by the government on decentralized crypto, and then the rate at which globally CBDCs have been developed. And I'm just witnessing what I think is kind of the intentional controlled demolition of the financial system and this move towards digital tyranny. So I'm educating people specifically on this issue because I think this is going to be the issue, not even in 2024, before 2024. I think the wheels are falling off now. And so I'm trying to not only educate people on the issue, but give actionable advice, because I've probably onboarded hundreds of people to crypto over the years. And in New Hampshire, we have probably the highest per capita crypto usage anywhere in the world. And so it's something I've done many times, and I've tried through this book and through the educational materials to help people take control of their own financial destiny, independent of who they vote for, or independent of even if there is a 2024 election. So I've picked this because I think this is actually going to be the most relevant issue generally over the next kind of 90 to 180 days.
Yeah, I want to definitely focus on some of what you just said, because I don't know if it's been articulated well enough thus far. Is just that between the organizations that you've worked for plays a huge, or worked with, or chaired, or founded, plays a huge part in what you just said about the highest per capita usage of cryptocurrency. Like, you live in a state that has been doing amazing work, and through organizations that you've been a part of, that you can claim at least a chunk of credit for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2012, and if you look at the Free State Project, in particular, Free Talk Live, Ian Freeman, and Mark Edge have been in crypto and Bitcoin since the very beginning. In fact, Roger Ver, who was dubbed Bitcoin Jesus very early on in Bitcoin, learned about Bitcoin from Free Staters Mark Edge and Ian Freeman, who have this radio show and have really been evangelizing this. So, for instance, Porkfest, the big Liberty gathering, has been accepting cryptocurrency since, I think, 2012, 2013. And there are numerous businesses throughout the state that take crypto. There are numerous crypto ATMs, and it's something that I've integrated into politics. It's kind of annoying when I see, well, RFK is the first presidential candidate to take Bitcoin. And I'm like, we were taking crypto in 2014. I funded a gubernatorial campaign with Ravencoin, and then I've been accepting multiple forms of crypto since February. But nevertheless, it is what it is. We're at that point of the adoption cycle. But crypto really is, and I'm not just pushing crypto. I'm pushing crypto, gold, and silver. Just anything that's self-custody, that's not centralized and not fiat. So it's not like I'm out here shilling for a particular crypto. I'm promoting the idea of people taking control literally of their own money. And at the same time, I'm trying to educate people on the fact that the state and fiat currency has literally never worked. I mean, it has a 0% success rate. So when you say to somebody, well, the dollar is going to collapse. Well, yeah, it's been the global reserve currency since 1920. No one's ever considered the idea that the dollar could collapse, or that the dollar wouldn't be the global reserve currency. But when you look at all of the research, it's on the tail end of being the global reserve currency. Global reserve currencies for the last 500 years have averaged they last about 100 years until they collapse. So we're like right up on the 103 years for being the global reserve currency. They always fail, and then somebody else picks up the slack as a global reserve currency, and then it fails. It's just again 100% failure rate. And so people need to be educated on that, and that there's actually for the first time an alternative. I mean, gold and silver have been alternatives through the years, but there are some issues with that. But decentralized crypto actually is a real alternative that can separate money and state and stop the boom bust cycle of governments that inevitably print money until they dissolve in oblivion. So
yeah.
And so this is why I wrote a book. This is why I have a 250-page book. There's going to be a lot of my process is going to be going out and actually making this presentation. It's hard I can't make it in 5 minutes because there's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to do longer form presentations and push this issue heavily and push, quality content on Twitter. And I think as everything is unraveling, it's going to be appreciated and is going to hopefully continue to go viral like the Bank Run Manifesto. And it will be something that people can go to for actionable advice as things start crumbling, because it doesn't matter what anybody says about 2024 if you don't get to 2024. If they start locking you out of your bank account, which that's close to on the horizon, or if we're looking at disastrous hyperinflation, then this isn't an issue where voting in 2024 solves this. This is an issue of how do we stop this now before the election?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's been weighing on my mind a lot as people ask me, like, who are you supporting in this election? Whether they're asking about, who between the 3 LP people are here, or, on a grander scale, or if they're, hyper duopoly people that are really just asking me, like Trump, DeSantis, or Biden. My answer is typically something along the lines of, we'll see if we make it to a 2024 election. Whether it's just like completely, I don't want to say rigged, because that's kind of a trigger. I don't mean rigged in the way that most Republicans mean rigged. I mean rigged in the way that most anarchists means rigged, right? And completely stolen, or it's going to collapse before we get there. And there's definitely some worry on my end of like.
David, I think the bad news is we are going to get to 2024, and there's going to be an election. To argue or give Aaron a little bit of pushback, I think it absolutely matters what the national campaigns look like. I think it matters who wins the presidency, and the extent to which a party like ours is able to raise awareness of these issues, compete, disrupt the race, whether that looks like getting to 35% or whether it just looks like getting to 35% in the polls and annoying the hell out of people. I believe that it is absolutely naive to think that we cannot affect the way Americans view the set of solutions that they have in front of them. You're right, Dan, that everyone does care about an issue, and a heck of a lot of people are waking up to the idea that public policy matters. That inflation, for example, doesn't just fall off of a tree. It's the result of bad public policy. And, we have our favorites. I hear, somebody might say, get rid of the FDA, and someone says, get rid of the FEC or the SEC. But for one reason or another, we see a heck of a lot of people backing off on people like to end the FBI now in the Republican Party, Aaron. But when we get to the Fed, all of a sudden we have cold feet. Oh, my goodness. We don't want to say end the Fed. That sounds too hard or scary. What are we going to do? Trade clamshells instead of dollars? No. There are methods to go after it, and it's important. And I think people are ready to hear transformational level solutions to these problems. I don't like the idea of going out there with solutions that you might hear from a Republican or a Democrat because they're half measures. They sound like last week's ideas. Typically they're wrong in the sense that you can't just replace individuals and get new types of governance. Our problems are institutional level. Some of these agencies have to be broken up, some sunset altogether, others winnowed down until they're irrelevant. The Fed is an example where you need to go after it in all three of those ways. Yeah, you start out by replacing the leadership with people from the correct schools of thought. They don't have to be Austrians per se. That would help, right? But at the very least, you got to appoint economists who believe in a rules-based system and not the discretionary idea of feeding the boom bust cycle that Aaron was just talking about. He's absolutely right about that. But we're not helping if we just stick our head in the sand and say, well, the Fed is hard and complicated and big and nasty. We got to go after them. You replace the leadership, then you replace the organization.
So I just want to say,
hold on. I want to give Aaron a chance to respond to that.
With all due respect, the Federal Reserve it's privately owned by the banks. Their interest isn't.
The leadership is appointed by the President of the United States.
Yes, it's a figurehead role. That I mean, we had Alan Greenspan. We had an object. Look, I think it's naive to think that a politician and that Congress, which has the power of the purse, is going to voluntarily give up control of the power of the purse. I think that's actually
that's
naive.
right.
And
that's
I
right.
think
that it would be naive.
And the last time, I mean, we had Alan Greenspan, by all accounts, was a libertarian and an objectivist, and he was a disaster. So bringing in people with the quote right school of thought, we've done that before. That didn't work. So what I'm suggesting is, I don't know that we get to 2024 with respect to the Federal Reserve, but I also think that switching out the figurehead at the top doesn't change the fact that there's this artificial decentralized structure, and at the end of the day, it's still controlled by the banking cartel. So that doesn't solve the problem. I'm actually saying,
no, you've got to get rid of the Federal Reserve System.
I think you guys are agreeing.
Yes, you want to get rid of the Federal Reserve System. It's not.
No, Aaron's saying you can't go after the Federal Reserve System. You have to.
No, I'm saying you crash.
You have to get rid of it, lock, stock, and barrel.
I'm saying the way that you do that is by mass non-compliance and you only need 3% of the people to pull their money out of the bank and switch it into alternatives to crash the Federal Reserve System. I'm not saying don't deal with it. I'm saying you don't deal with it politically. You deal with it by exiting the system. You deal with it by, and because now we don't even have 10% reserve requirement deposits for the banks, we're talking about 3% of the people take action. That brings down the Federal Reserve. I'm actually talking about directly ending the Federal Reserve, not counting on a series of things that are kind of beyond improbable in terms of there isn't a configuration here. If I win the nomination for the Republican Party, it's not going to change the composition of Congress. If we have a libertarian president, it's not going to change the composition of Congress. And it's not going to lead to the change of the Federal Reserve. 3% of Americans taking their money out of banks will collapse the Federal Reserve System.
I'm sorry, Aaron. That's a whole pile of layered silliness. A libertarian White House is going to replace the leadership of the Fed, and that will allow movement of legislation in 2 years to end the system altogether.
I would also argue in the condition where a libertarian is elected president, you're going to have a libertarians elected to Congress as well. It's not just you won't just elect a libertarian to president. Like if you're electing a libertarian president, there's going to be down ballot support. You're going to have libertarians in the legislature, in addition to the small L libertarians that you have that are already on the legislature, right? I just wanted to say one quick thing to kind of liven things up a little bit. You mentioned getting rid of the SEC, Mike. I'm just going to say, guys, as we campaign through the South, make sure you're making sure folks know that's the Security Exchange Commission, not the Southeastern Conference of College Football. Because if you say you want to get rid of the SEC and they think you're talking about football, you're going to actually lose a lot of votes in the South. So
that's good advice there.
Fair warning to you guys, coming from a guy in Georgia. Just make sure you're telling them you want to end the right SEC.
I wanted to say I'm a little bit more optimistic than Aaron is on the time scale, but I do agree that losing the reserve currency status is going to just crush the standard of living of average Americans, and it's really painful. And it's of our own making, right? It's of our own making. Us endlessly taking on debt, 32 trillion now, heading toward 40 trillion right away. This is basically allowing the rest of the world to not have confidence in the dollar, right? They see that we're taking on all this debt and they realize, hey, this dollar isn't worth what they say it is worth, right? And that is what the downfall of this thing is. The ship, I think, could still be turned around, but we have to get our fiscal house in order and start reducing the debt and showing the rest of the world that we're fiscally responsible with our assets and that we are worthy of the reserve currency status, right? That we are good shepherds of the reserve currency status. And so, you know, the other thing is like what I'm thinking about Aaron's plan of the bank run. And what I'm thinking is it's great for those 3% that pull their money out first. And then the banking system collapses and every mom, pop, and kid in the world money is basically worthless. And we're in some kind of crazy Great Depression because the entire financial system has collapsed. It would take a long time to get the economy going again, right? Because everything is interconnected. So completely crashing the system sounds, it sounds interesting and it sounds like it would definitely lead to a lot of change. I'm just afraid that the change would be really dramatic for a lot of people and hurt a lot of people in the process.
Well, understand, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
You're 125% right.
I'm gonna let Aaron respond to this real quick and then put a bow on this so that we can move on to the next thing because we're coming up on 2 hours. Go ahead.
Collapse of the system is going to happen whether you want it to or not. The question is, are there people that are going to be educated that actually try to take self-custody and take control or not? The idea that the dollar is going to survive is not backed by historical precedent. There was and I encourage all of you to read my book. There was a guy that did an analysis of 775 fiat currencies. The average fiat currency only lasts 27 years. They all fail. And if you look at the 7 main factors for why a fiat currency fails, the United States is flashing red on all 7 of those indicators. So the idea that we're going to right the ship, there is no example in human history of where someone's righted the ship. The idea that we have $32 trillion worth of debt and all this other stuff, this movie's been played before. The idea that we're printing currency and devaluing our currency, this always happens when fiat currency collapses. So it's going to collapse whether people are participating in the bank run or not. Right now, yes, from a global reserve currency perspective, the dollar used to be 79%. 79% of commerce was done using the US dollar. That's dropped to 58%. It's dropping even more rapidly today. You have the BRICS plus 24 other countries aligned on dumping the dollar. And by 2030, the BRICS will have a greater percentage of world GDP than the West. In the last 12 weeks, I believe it is, $800 billion has already moved out of the banks. There's already a slow motion bank run happening as we speak. The M2 money supply is at the lowest level it's been since the Great Depression. So there are factors, internal, external, at play here for which it matches a historical pattern. And I think that the idea that it's being righted, I'm not seeing a political strategy that can actually win to reverse it, because it's going to require what? Libertarian wins the president and wins a supermajority. Are there even going to be enough candidates running? In the Republican Party, I don't care if things are worse if the Republicans control Congress and the White House. There aren't enough like fiscally conservative Republicans. It's a uniparty situation. So yes. I'm not seeing, and in any practical situation, as countries are flowing out of the dollar, as people are taking their money out of the dollar right now, we're not I don't think we're talking about 10 years. I don't even think we're talking about 5 years. And we haven't even talked about the initiative regarding CBDC and the interconnection between groups like the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, and the WEF, and their structured plan moving towards one currency that is digital, programmable, and controlled by centralized government. That's another factor at play here. I'm just not seeing how an electoral strategy that stops or even addresses this, because let's all be honest, who has political courage that actually gets elected? Who's able to get elected that has or maintains
Nobody.
courage?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
So
Nobody.
I'm gonna play slightly unbiased unbiased moderator here, and I have to agree with you, Aaron. I think that I don't know that there's a political strategy to right the ship. There might be a political strategy to delay the collapse a little bit, but not enough to right the ship. But we are coming up on 2 hours, so I want to give you guys each a chance to tell people how they can get involved with your campaign, find your stuff, and either volunteer or donate. I'm going to go in reverse order this time. So starting with Dan.
All right. I will tell you this. First, go to taxationstheft.info and learn how to legally stop paying income tax. And then figure out how to start your own organization, and whatever issue you really care about, create an organization that goes out and educates people how you can solve that problem without stealing from people and using government force and coercion. And as soon as you figure that out, then contact me and I'll help you build that organization, because that's what I see. That's how we win this ideological war that's been waged against us. That's the only way to win. I don't care about taking donations or volunteering for my campaign. I want to see you start your own organization and go out there and start fighting to win this war.
Hell yeah. Aaron.
Yeah, as far as getting involved with my campaign, I would suggest following me on Twitter first, at Aaron R. Day, and looking at my pinned tweet, which is the Bank Run Manifesto, which actually discusses a lot of what we've been talking about now, and what the thinking is behind that. Then I would encourage you to take a look at my book. You can actually find this information at my campaign website, day2024.com. You can pre-order the book. The book will be live on June the 4th. It's The Final Countdown: Crypto, Gold, Silver, and the People's Last Stand Against Tyranny by Central Bank Digital Currencies. And then from there, if you want to join and help amplify the message and volunteer to help kind of promote this concept and the ideas in the book and the Bank Run Manifesto, that's where we're at right now. Or you can sign up for the list, and in the fourth quarter, we'll be looking at, potentially doing other kind of normal campaign activities. But for the next 5-6 months, it's going to be focused on pushing content and educational materials around this bank run concept.
All right. I think Chase is next.
Yeah, so you guys can check me out at my website. It's votechaseoliver.com. There you can link to all of my social media, see my press releases, my issues, keep track with where I am as I travel across the country. I'm running for the Libertarian nomination for president. I want to provide positive brand recognition for the Libertarian party so that more people know what a Libertarian is and have a great idea of what they can do and what Libertarians actually bring to the table, as opposed to these false slanders that the two-party system throws our way every time. I want to make national news and disrupt the duopoly. I've already done it once in the 2022 election, when I caused a runoff in Georgia and caused national news and attention to the Libertarian Party and to our philosophy. I want to keep disrupting elections in state, but in all 50 states plus DC. I'm somebody who believes in campaigning with empathy and common grace and respect for other people. If you see me traveling around the country, please hand me a 3x5 card that says what freedom means to you on it. I'm collecting them right now so that we can send them to an author who will curate a book. I have right now 45 cards. I'm trying to get 1,000 of them. So if you don't have a 3x5 card, I'm going to hand one to you if I see you as I travel around the country. But again, votechaseoliver.com is the place to find the campaign, to find out what we're doing, and to stay involved. And if you want to see me in person, Monday, June 5th, I'll be at Atlanta City Hall fighting Cop City, and I encourage every Libertarian to get out there and make their voice heard against the militarization of police. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, hell yeah. Mr. Mapstead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so Libertarians have a hard time raising money. That's a fact. We don't have the same infrastructure that the Republicans and the Democrats do. So we need your support. And I'm looking for thousands of donors, even if it's just $1, to show that people support our messaging and our campaigns. So you can go to lars24.com to do that. Come to Lars for President on Facebook, or at Libertarian Lars on Twitter, and follow my common sense solutions for everyday problems that Americans are facing, and fair solutions for everybody, so that we aren't picking winners and losers. We're bringing the same solutions for everybody so that everybody has an opportunity for success in America. The kind of success that I found, I want to bring to everybody in America.
Hell yeah. Mike.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us on, by the way, too. It's a lot of fun. Folks can go check out, we have 2 websites. Folks can check out goldnewdeal.org. The Gold New Deal is our platform. It's a collection of the most transformational ideas. I should probably offer a trigger warning at this point. If you're, one of those guys that just likes slogans like defund the police, or on the other side, back the blue, you're probably going to get your feelings hurt, because we talk a lot about the most difficult types of reform and how important they are. So we're really going to go at it. If you're not ready for an anti-war message, for example, you probably want to shield your eyes when you go to the website, because this is truly a collection of the most transformational ideas. Similarly, David, back to what we were just talking about, if you just want to throw up your hands and say participating in national politics is a waste of time, I'm frustrated, we can't do it. It's naive to think that we can make an impact. This is probably not the website or the campaign for you, because it's just not true. We're poised to play a major role, but we have to lead with policy, and we have to do it in a way that differentiates us from the other parties. So if you're ready for that, go to MikeTermott.com. You can contact us there if you can spell it right. You can email me at mike@MikeTermott.com. My real phone number is posted on the websites. Drop me a text or give me a call. We have professional staff, as I mentioned before, going up to like a dozen paid people in a week or so. So we have plenty of people to help you if you want to volunteer. And most importantly, I've been invited to speak at Pork Fest. I've been invited to speak at Freedom Fest. So if folks want to go there and either shake my hand or punch me in the face, look forward to seeing you.
All right. And you can find all of those websites down in the description of this video, wherever you're watching it, so that you can find all of these great, wonderful people. And I think a good chunk of you guys are going to be at Pork Fest, as will I. Super excited to see you all there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on tonight. This was great.
Thanks for having us.
Peace, love, and liberty.
Amen. All right, y'all. If you have enjoyed what you're seeing so far, or the other things that you've seen from the show and the channel, come on back tomorrow night. We're going to be live at a special time, 6 p.m., because our guest is from Europe, and so it would be like 3 a.m. for her if we did it at the normal time. She's still agreed to come on at midnight her time for a show, so super excited about that. Come on back. We're going to talk about sexuality and kind of how to heal from trauma about that. So it's going to be a fun, interesting conversation. Come on back then. Until then, keep up the fight.